Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Cass Clay Food Commission meeting on Wednesday, May 8th. First item on the agenda we have is regarding the agenda. I do have one revision here. Item number 5, apparently Adam is not with us this morning. So we're going to scratch number 5, and during number 7, Kim and Noel will talk about a little bit what Adam was going to brief us on. So are there any other revisions to the agenda besides that? I guess hearing none, I'd entertain a motion on the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
A motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 1B is a review of the minutes. You should have received them prior to the meeting here, but if you'd like to take a moment to review them, and then I'll entertain a motion when you're ready.
Move approval.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Okay, item number 2 is commission check-in. This is kind of our roll call for the commissioners up here. If you would like to brief us on anything you think would be pertinent to the discussion, you may. We'll start down at this end with Jim.
I have no new things going on indoors.
Okay, well, there's lots of great things always happening indoors, right?
We got cleanup week, but
Great, thanks.
No report.
No updates.
I did talk to a Horace resident that was wanting to put together a farmer's market, so we're working on that. We have potential of a better spot coming for next year, but this year we'd kind of just try it out a few times, see how it goes. And she has some contacts with farmers, so it should be fun.
Good.
Good morning, everyone. I just left our letter carriers press conference that was going on. So this Saturday, put out your canned goods because the letter carriers in Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, and Dilworth will be picking up those canned good items and they all the letter carriers are, along with delivering your mail, are also collecting the food. The food will be going to the Great Plains Food Bank, Dorothy Day, and Emergency Food Pantry are the 3 locations that will be receiving the food. I do know that they always accept volunteers that want to help them collect that food if they want. If you're interested, or someone that'd be interested, you can connect with me, and I can always connect you with them as well. And then another announcement is with the end of school coming up here with the Great Plains Food Bank, we help with the childhood hunger programs, and we know that children are no longer in the schools anymore and getting lunches and breakfast, so we do our youth summer meals program along with other community partners throughout throughout West Fargo, Fargo Moorhead also do it, but we have 2 site locations this summer. One is at Village West, which is kind of over by Hornbacher's on 45th Street, the big blue water tower. And then we do another one in West Fargo that we are currently offering. And so we also accept volunteers to help us with administering those youth summer meals for those kiddos in the summer. That's it for me.
Well, good morning again. My name is Mike Thorsten. I'm the chairperson of this committee. I'm a City of West Fargo commissioner. Lots of great things happening in West Fargo, but nothing pertinent to the discussion here. So I'll pass it to Vern.
Vern Bennett, Cass County Commissioner, no report.
Jeremiah Uzek, Flannel Fizz, and Off the Deck Hot Sauce. My peppers might actually get in the ground soon. So.
Exciting. Sarah Watson Curry, Moorhead City Council. Also lots of great things happening, but nothing pertinent to report on.
Mindy Grant, I'm a member at large from West Fargo. We do a lot of gardening, and it's awesome.
Kayla Bridmore, a member at large. I have to agree about the rain.
Good, thank you, everybody, and thank you for being here. Item number 3 is single-use packaging materials issue, brief and snapshot. Whitney Oxendahl.
opening a muffin for Cy to make it through this presentation. This is Cy, and I'm Whitney Oxendahl, and I'm the creator and developer of the two documents you see in front of you, the issue brief and the community snapshot. And today we are going to be talking about single-use materials. And I do have a slide. Do I? Is it this one? Yeah. There we go. This will be just up in the background, just highlighting what single-use materials are. So these are plastic, styrofoam, and other materials designed for one use, a single use. And then they end up either in the environment, in the landfill. You might see plastic bags in trees. So a lot of people are very concerned about what's happening with these single-use materials, especially related to food, because the number one plastic pollution is food wrappers and containers. So that's why we are highlighting it here today. So these can be containers, plastic bags, plastic cups, lids, straws, and many more things. And 40% of all plastic produced is used in packaging, and most used only one time. So people have gotten really concerned. This was a hot topic in 2018, especially banning plastic straws from restaurants around the country, because people are looking at the oceans, because a lot of things end up in the ocean. You may have seen pictures of giant islands of plastic in the middle of the ocean. 8 million tons end up in the ocean each year of plastics. And so people are concerned about marine life and fish and turtles. And so that's why we want to highlight it here today. So in the issue brief, you'll see things happening around the nation and around the world with things related to plastic reduction. So in other countries, they're just like the European Union, they're striving to reduce the amount of plastic that is used all over the European Union. In California, they have banned plastic straws in a way that's an upon request law. So restaurants, sit-down restaurants can't give out plastic straws, but if people request them, then they can give one out. So that's the way they're kind of giving restaurants some leeway. Some cities have an all-out ban on plastic straws where they have to use paper or compostable plastics. So now I will move to the community snapshot to highlight what's happening in our region and in our in Fargo-Moorhead area. I just want to highlight a few that have interesting projects going on. So we have the FM Plastic Bag Task Force. They are working to educate the public on what they can do with plastic bags especially. So they have a Day Without a Bag campaign to start a conversation about using reusable bags. They highlight where you can use them at different grocery stores, where you can bring them in and get a reusable bag for free. And so they are doing a lot of work on plastic bags especially. On page 2, I'll move to grocery retailers. Prairie Roots Food Co-op, I'll highlight them because they have a couple new things that they just started doing. So they just went bagless, so they won't even have paper bags. They'll just have boxes at the front for people to use, and then also t-shirt tote bags that River Keepers makes. Because River Keepers saw a lot of plastic bags in the trees nearby the river, and so they started this where volunteers can make t-shirt totes to bring to some of the local grocery stores for people to use. And they also just started a Take a Jar, Leave a Jar program at their bulk site in the store at Prairie Roots. So you can bring in your in your jars, and then they'll clean and sanitize them, and then other people can take them to use. Because a lot of people have old mason jars sitting around. So they have a few new things, and then there's a lot of grocery stores that will take the plastic bags for recycling, and then Natural Grocers also is bagless. So those are some things grocery retailers are doing. Let's see, Red River Market, it tries to be a landfill-free event. You will see them on the second page as well at the bottom. They have like 7,000 to 10,000 people coming each weekend, and so they try really hard to get their vendors to use browns so that they can be compostable. But one thing they're missing is they don't have enough places to put all the compostable things at the end. So a commercial composting facility, especially a high heat one to break down those compostables, would be a resource that would be very good for them in the future if we ever move in that direction. Let's see. One cool thing with the colleges, Concordia and MSUM has a Green to Go box program. So if you get a washable, reusable to-go container, you can put down a deposit and students can take that back with them and take their leftovers and then bring that back and they'll clean it and give them a new box. So that's a really cool program that I didn't know about before researching this, that both of those campuses do. And a lot of our local, I talked about plastic straw bans and changes to plastic straws. There are a few businesses like Blackbird Pizza, Granite City Brewing, Food and Brewery, Hodo Restaurant, and even the Microsoft campus that are either doing away with plastic straws or moving toward paper straws, which I think is what Granite City is doing nationally. So they're doing it here as well. And finally, I want to talk about one thing in this issue brief, or this community snapshot, that is not reducing plastics. It's not reducing the use of single-use materials. It's in North Dakota. So this was a topic for the state legislature. They passed and signed a law, HB 1200, which would be a ban on the ban of plastics. So a Minot legislator who owns a waste hauling and landfill business, he brought forth this law this bill that was signed into law, which would, among other things, ban the ban of plastic straws and ban the tax or ban of plastic bags, among other things. So they said that they didn't want a patchwork of policies around for cities and counties, but people who were opposed said that communities would want their local control. They'd want to be in control of what kind of policies they put into place regarding single-use plastics. Because communities like local city and counties are a great way to experiment with different policies and see what's right for your own community. And so that's the only one in here that you'll see on page 2 where it won't reduce single-use materials. It will keep things the same, or I guess a possibility to increase, but mostly keep things the same, how they are. And then finally, if you go to page 4, that's all I'm going to highlight in this. You can read through it, the rest of it on your own. For community actions, because there's a lot of local government officials, I will highlight some of those. So, as I mentioned, a high-heat commercial composting site. If anyone in local government hears of someone that might be interested in coming to the area or pushing for that, that would be a great resource for a lot of businesses, especially with large dining centers. And if there's any resources for businesses and consumers on single-use materials and how to reduce their single-use materials. And then finally, a positive way for businesses to recognize them, you can recognize them for their efforts. There's a lot of them in the issue brief that are doing things to reduce single-use materials, single-use plastics. So there's ways to highlight them for their victories in these areas. And on the final page, if you're interested for your own self, there's many ways. What can I do? There's many ways that you can reduce your own single-use materials in your daily life, like using a metal straw and recycling as much as you can and bringing your own reusable containers when you go out to eat. So those are the things I wanted to highlight. Do you have any questions on single-use materials that I will try to answer? Or ask Steve if he can answer them from the Red River Market.
Any questions? Yes.
Part of our discussion at the Clay County Commission is that there are areas designated for people to recycle these plastic bags, say the checkout or the entryway at Walmart, so to speak. But the concern that we've heard is that they're not often as visible as they should be. And so part of the comments and feedback that we've heard is how can we help to make these areas better visible, or the knowledge that they are there.
That is a great point. And have you connected with the FM Plastic Bag Task Force about that?
So we have members from the.
That's what I wondered, yes.
But I think that message has been relayed, but just in your work too, to just help advocate.
Just a comment for me for that. That's a good point, because signage is everything, really. We find, I'm one of the founders of the Red River Market, and we find that signage, especially on waste, is so important for people to understand what goes where. And so I think that's a really good comment.
Has there been any consideration in helping new businesses figure out how to align themselves to be, like my soda business is zero waste, but it's a lot easier to start zero waste than it is to move from disposables to. Are there any resources that can be shared with companies that may be interested in moving that direction?
I didn't come across any, but that would be a good point, especially, like the Small Business Association, or like how can local governments pair with this topic and provide those resources to people. I think that's a really good point, Jeremiah.
Sarah?
Thank you. Thanks, Whitney and Cy. Great research. I wanted to just highlight two things. So I've been involved with the Plastic bag task force a little bit, and the big thing in education is with the single-use plastic bags is that they can be recycled, but with the wave and transition to single-sort recycling, they can't go into our single-sort bin. So I feel like go on a mountaintop and tell everyone that you can recycle your plastic bags, but they have to be source separated. So to echo on Commissioner Manjo's comment, there are lots of locations to drop them off, but they aren't always visible because they want them to sort of blend in with their entrance or other things too. So it would be great to see a more unified look so people know it's a certain color or it's always in a certain location. But please let people know they can be recycled. Do not put them in your recycling bin. They cause a lot of potential damage to the machinery that sorts them, and a lot of lost time in that. And then just with that comment too is the hierarchy of waste. So in solid waste, we always talk about the hierarchy of waste, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. And recycling's great, but of course, just eliminating having that in our waste stream is really important. And then just one question on your research too. Were you able to connect with Minn Kota or our local recyclers?
I didn't, no.
Okay. I just,
What would you like added to this? Because I can update this.
well, I just, looking at the different businesses and organizations that are making strides is really awesome and encouraging, but it's always good to make sure that there's correct education that's given. I was at an event this weekend too where they were putting things in composting and recycling, and a lot of times when there's people engaging folks in those opportunities, they're already active recyclers and we just don't want them to have bad habits. So there's, some of these smaller pieces don't end up, the way we process our waste, they don't actually end up being recycled, which is not what people want to hear, but I think it is important to have an honest look at that so they're giving good information and it's not trickling into a larger change in behavior in our community. So all for education and helping with the culture change of reducing that. But yeah, I would just make sure to talk to Minn Kota, as all our recyclers generally end up in those channels.
Okay. Would you like me to add Minn Kota and the other recyclers to the education portion of this community?
I think it'd be worthwhile.
Okay, great. I was focused on this is focused on food, so I didn't think in that direction, but that is a very good point, and I will contact them and add that to that section.
Okay. I have a great contact for you too.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Winnie.
Does anyone know the answer to that? Steve?
Please step up so everyone can hear the comments, I guess.
Steve French with the Red River Market. Kind of got started there working on the zero waste initiative that we do there. So I think you're right, it's mostly education, right? To that direct point, yes, wash it out. Because when you go see it, they just have large sorting lines. And so they put it through, and if it's dirty, they'll throw it out. The kind of disheartening part that we learned was that most of the time it gets thrown out, right? So because they run it as a business, if they can't use it as a sellable commodity, they just put it back in they just put it back in a landfill. So yeah, we've been kind of thinking about it at the market, how do we make it more just sensible streams? For example, pretty much only throw away the plastic lids and straws. If we can sort with our vendors to use just 1s, 3s, and 5s from Minn Kota, or that's what they'll take. So go that route, and then just browns. But what's interesting about small business setup is that I've talked to Cole Paper Company as well as Dakota, and they really don't, it's not easy to get a single vendor to buy products for them. I called and said we have about 40 vendors looking to source better products, and they're just it's not that easy of a transition, right? So Jeremiah, you're talking about it, and we just had an orientation, right? And to make that leap to get someone in touch with a supplier that way, it's just not as seamless as you might think for a local one. So lots on education. But the big thing I learned doing it every weekend was that most of the time we want it to be recyclable, so we put things there. But that education piece between Minn Kota can only recycle so much, and that's all they're willing to take, and the rest goes into landfill. So just making that connection between bottles, jugs, and tubs, that Mary from once, that's Mary's motto, bottles, jugs, and tubs, So anyway, that's what I got.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
Is a comment.
Abby?
I'm Abby Gold, steering committee member. So, sorry, Whitney, I didn't talk to you about this, but it just came to my mind about because what Jeremiah said about building that into his business right from the start, this zero waste, business that you have is probably not something that a lot of people do when they start their businesses. They don't even think in that direction. So I had the opportunity in Minneapolis a while back to go to a restaurant that's on Lake Harriet in Minneapolis, or Lake Nokomis. And from the very start, their business too was started as like a zero waste business. So my point is, building a business plan that includes this kind of strategy is really important. And maybe that's a part of the education that, maybe the Small Business Association can be engaged in, or any, the cities and the counties can kind of have some, when businesses register in the city or county, they can ask those questions about, well, how are you going to take these concepts into consideration when you start your new business? Not requiring it, but putting it out there is something that is an important aspect of saving money for the whole community, if they can also engage in, these kinds of strategies. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Vern?
Yes, looking at another dimension, we have landfill, we have recycling, and then we have incineration. Do you have a position, or does anybody on the position that we should be taking on incineration regarding these waste products? I know there's sometimes an environmental concern, but anybody have a position on that?
What you said is correct. There is that environmental concern of when it's incinerated, what pollutants are coming out into the air. So it's an air quality issue. But I mean that's an option that definitely could be looked into for local governments.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions?
And I do have one other comment to just put us back to the blueprint that we developed, 2 years ago on metropolitan food composting, and how that is a strategy that many communities across the nation are moving toward. And so, that might be another thing for the commission here to consider in your local, as a group, but also in your local commissions and councils. So that composting piece is a pretty important way to take a lot of things out of the food stream, out of the landfill. So we have that blueprint.
Just one comment or question, I guess, is would it be worthwhile to engage the chamber on this subject? I don't know what they have for membership, as far as people that are utilizing these type of products, whether it's restaurants and food stores or whatever.
Yeah, if you want to focus on it as a whole, because this one was actually related to food and dining service, but I think it could be focused on as a whole. So I mean, if anyone wants to reach out to any organization, let's do it. Or if you want to gather some people together to work on it locally, I mean, that's what this is here for. So yeah, I think that's a good point, Mike.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I'll tag on that. I know there is a group at the chamber that we started a pilot program, for single sort recycling for businesses in Moorhead, and it was prompted by a group from the chamber. So there is that interest there, and so we have some preliminary results, and they're going to be looking at doing that and then offering that as a potential service, and seeing what the price point and everything would be for the city to do that. So there is that interest in our business community for sure.
Very good. Thank you for the report.
Thank you for your questions. And I'll be introducing the next speaker if you want to throw it to me, back to me whenever
I'll be
you're ready.
happy to let you do that. Item 4.
Right, our next speaker is Paula Seltzler. Paula has spent the past 20 years and her entire career working for Sodexo in the Fargo-Moorhead area. She has supported the operations at Minnesota State University Moorhead, Noridian, and is currently the General Manager of Nutrition Services at Essentia Health in Fargo. Her work at Essentia is included in the community snapshot you have in front of you. Her enthusiasm for this topic is reflected in changes she has already made to reduce Essentia's single-use materials. And I'll let Paula tell you more. Here. It must be right here.
All right, I'm ready. Good morning. My name is Paula Seltzler. As Whitney said, I have worked for Sodexo my entire career. And has anybody heard of Sodexo? Good. So we're a large international company, which helps me in my quest for reducing single-use materials, because there's a ton of resources that we have. So Sodexo operates in 80 countries around the world. Here in North America or in the US, we're in all 50 states, and we have about 120,000 employees in the US, so I am one of 120,000, thank you. And so our local impact here is MSU Moorhead. We have operated there since 1999, Essentia, and then Noridian as well. So I have had the opportunity to work at all 3 locations, and currently am at Essentia. So at Essentia, the hospital opened in 2000, and when they started, they really had a small cafe and a small room service operation that they used to support the hospital. Back in 2015, they remodeled our kitchen and the cafe, and so in room service, we serve about 250 to 400 trays every day. That varies, of course, depending on how full the hospital is, and then another 750 to 1,000 transactions in our retail. So we have our cafe, we have a coffee cart, and then we have a separate kind of kiosk that operates. It's a Starbucks and a concept called Sandella's, so sandwiches and wraps and those kinds of things. So as you can see on our slide there, our room service is about 75% reusable products, so we're using a lot of China and stuff in room service. But our cafe, not so hot, about 95% is single-use products. So these are some slides that I just wanted to share from the Sodexo resources that I was able to find. You know, it's really discouraging, the stats that we find about plastics in the ocean, and we might live in North Dakota, but it's going to affect us too, right? Like, we don't live by the ocean, but just the amount of plastic and waste, and you know, our family enjoys a vacation on a beach most years, and it's, you know, we were in Jamaica, and there was a toilet seat floating toward us, so that was, you know, yeah, so. So Sodexo has a global commitment for 2025. They call it their Better Tomorrow plan, and the commitment is to train their employees fully to reduce carbon emission and work on food waste targets too. So in North America specifically, in 2019, short term, to reduce single plastic takeout bags and plastic stirrers by the end of 2019, and to reduce straw use by adopting the by request policy. So again, by the end of 2019. It's May. We got some work to do. Okay, and then the long-term goals again are slated for 2025. So. I have a success story to share about what happened at Essentia, and it was kind of a good result of some things that we were doing. So back in June of last year, we were looking at ways to reduce departmental costs, because I think that's pretty common in most every business. What can we do to save more money? And you know, the one thing that I noticed from when I started was the employee habits that, like, all the nurses from the floors would come down, and they'd have these 32-ounce cups of water that they'd get from the cafe. So yay, they're drinking water, right? But they double them up, put a lid on them, take a straw for each. So we were going through 4 cups, 2 lids, and 2 straws just for our employees every day, and we were not recouping any costs on that, and there was a ton of waste that resulted. So that was impactful both in cost and in environmental. So we put together a plan, and I had these beautiful mugs. They came in 3 colors, okay? They came in 3 colors. So if you were lucky, you got the blue one. If you weren't, you got the silver. And so we offered them for sale in the cafe. And I tried to incorporate, like, to engage some other departments in the hospital if they wanted to sponsor this as part of their groups. And nobody really wanted to do it. So I took a leap of faith, and we sold the mugs for $20. So they aren't a Yeti, which you would buy for $40. But they're nice. They're great quality, high quality mugs. And with that, we just put a little like coupon in there so they could get a free soda or coffee with it when they bought it. They could either, take it home and sanitize it and bring it back, which is what I would do, or they could just go ahead and fill it right away. So, and with that, we also offered a 25-cent discount for employees that used any reusable mug. So I didn't really care if they spent $20 on my mug. I just wanted them to quit using all those styrofoam cups because it was costing me money and it was making me cringe what I saw going in the garbage. In addition to that, so we save them 25 cents if they use a reusable mug. But we charge them 25 cents if they take a styrofoam cup and don't buy like a pop with it. Back in October, we ordered 150 mugs. I have sold 125. I made $5 on each mug, so it's not like I'm rolling in a lot of cash or anything. But that resulted in $625 worth of profit just with the mugs alone, without implementing or considering the amount that we saved in the styrofoam. So the next slide here on results is we reduced our spending on those foam cups. I'm just gonna call it $1,000 a month. That's a lot of money when you're, dealing with food. $1,000 is a lot of money, and based on what our margins is, we would have to increase our sales to make that margin up by almost $100,000 a month. So that's huge. $1,000 is $1,000. I started charging for those styrofoam cups. I make $75 a month on that too. So regained a little bit of money. That pays for a case of styrofoam cups, $75. So over the course of 3 months, we saved 23,000 cups, which is a lot. So we did a quick little math and we measured them out. If we, laid them end to end and went from the hospital to Shields like we were flying like a crow, that's how much we saved in 3 months. That's a lot of cups. And it didn't cost us money, it saved us money. We're doing better things for the environment, and there's some real impact there that came. And it started out as saving money, but I think that we made more gains in other areas. So that's been super cool. So my future plans then is I need to get on to Sodexo's short-term goals for 2019, reducing straw use. So of course, we can't completely eliminate straws in the hospital because of, certain people need cares and stuff, but we're gonna implement that straw by request in both our room service and in the cafe. I also am putting together a plan right now to look at what we can do in the cafe, because we're doing about 95% right now that is single use. And so just some simple little math there, like if somebody comes in and buys a plate with a lid, that costs me 25 cents. That's my cost just for the disposable, and it doesn't count anything else. And a reusable plate costs $5.15 is what it's going to cost me. So my clients asked me to put together some information and see how long it would take for us to get returned. So that is certainly something that we're going to be looking at. And then also when we go to the reusable plates, the silverware also is super interesting. So if we reuse a fork 5 times, we are going to pay for that. That's the same cost as 5 disposable forks. So that is, it doesn't take long to make your money up on that disposable fork. So those are some things that we want to do in the very near future by the end of 2019. So, things that I'd be interested in seeing in the community, not only as somebody that supports a business, but as a taxpayer and a resident also, just other options for proper disposal of compostable items. So, when I worked at Noridian or Blue Cross, we looked at do we switch to compostable materials and those kinds of things? Well, it seemed kind of silly to do that when, they're just going in the garbage anyway. But, what can we do? So can we, does it make sense for businesses to bring in those higher cost items, recoup some of that cost possibly, so that we can take care of it properly? The other thing that I think is super important is community education. And when I was talking to my family about coming here, my daughter is a sophomore at Davies. And you may have heard that Davies recently implemented reusable forks. So who remembers how many disposable forks Davies can buy before they pay for one fork? 5, thank you. Good. See, they're listening. So the students at Davies are throwing the reusable forks in the garbage in effort to use more, so they don't do that anymore because they think it's gross that they have to have a reusable fork. So somewhere along the line, and my daughter has a friend who's in the environmental club that did all of the research on it, and the schools wash their silverware more than a restaurant would. But why are students in high school doing that? Where did we miss, right, with our kids? So I think that it starts young. I think that we can have much more impact long-term with students than maybe some of us older folk that are more set in our ways. But I think that is a huge thing. So Davies did a great thing by implementing that reusable silverware. I did like a little cheer. That was awesome. But why are the kids throwing it away, right? And then I also, I love the idea of the single-use or the reducing that single-use items, like the shopping bags. Somebody really is going to try to pass a law that we can't have that. That's crazy to me. Because if I go to the grocery store with my little reusable bag, I can get like 8 bags, plastic bags worth of groceries in one. And so I think that is something that we definitely need to look at. And I was excited when I started hearing about that it's going that way. I was in Frisco in January, and we didn't have a reusable bag, and we got charged for wherever we went to the convenience store or whatever. So I definitely think that that's something that the community should look at. So, for me personally, I haven't always been so passionate about this. I have an older daughter that's in college, and she came back and is pretty fired up about the single-use stuff and the recycling stuff. And so I definitely think it's the wave of the future. As an employer, our next round of employees are going to expect businesses to participate in this kind of activity by reducing single use, by recycling, by composting, and those kinds of things. That's going to be an expectation. It's not going to be like, oh, I wish we did that. But I think that in order for it to be effective for businesses here and everywhere else, it has to be cost effective. How do we do it and still be able to run our business and be successful? So I do think it's going to be a win-win for businesses, customers, and the environment, because I don't know how we can continue doing what we're doing the way that we've done it so long with, whatever it is, the plastic silverware, the deli trays or whatever, and not run out of space to put the stuff. So that is what I have today. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Questions? I guess not.
I'm off the hook, thank you.
One comment, I think you really strike on something that I think is very important. As a city, we have, no sort recycling, and I think most of the jurisdictions here do. But I think perhaps the citizens believe that means you can recycle everything, and I think we need to teach them there are things that can't be, and if we can drive that, number one, it'll clean up our recycling loads that are going out, because they can reject them nowadays, or the market for recyclables is not like it used to be. So it helped the municipalities that way. But on the other hand, if they realize, hey, you can't recycle styrofoam, I think a lot of people think you can, or, stuff like that, maybe they'll start looking for alternatives or pressing for alternatives, or be willing to pay for an alternative instead. So I think there is a great deal of education that could be done. So I think that's a very strong part of the piece you presented here. So.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that it really made it apparent when you were talking about the amount of cups, how important it is for these bigger companies to take a stand. On a small level, a lot of people feel like, what difference am I going to make? And, it will be a difference, but it's the big companies that are going to make the big difference.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. As we mentioned, item 5 was scratched from the original agenda. Item 6 is a social network analysis. Looks like we have Bob Birch, NDSU Extension graduate student.
Hi, I'm just introducing Bob Birch and Dr. Gary Gorham as well from NDSU Department of Anthropology and Sociology. And Bob Birch is here today to talk about some important research that we've been engaged with him on something called social network analysis, where we really want to find out what the network is like around food policy in the Cass Clay Food Partners catchment area. So Bob is currently employed with NDSU Extension Service. He's been there a long, long time. I've known him for a while, and he's been very, very thoughtful and intentional about the research that he's going to explain to you. So I'll let him take it away.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today.
Morning.
So as Abby mentioned, we are undertaking this research project on social network analysis of food policy in Cass and Clay counties. Dr. Gorham and I, with help from Abby Gold, Kim Lepetsky, and Noelle Harden, have put together a survey. We'll talk more about that later. You've got it with your packets, of decision makers in Cass and Clay County to find out how they are interacting with each other around food policy. The reason that we're doing this, the reason that we're interested in it is Dr. Gorham and I are both interested in social network analysis as a tool to measure relationships between people in communities, and we're interested in how those relationships drive change in those communities. So those relationships we think of as social capital in a community. Just like we think of our financial capital or our built capital, the relationships between people are capital for us. They have value, and they have the potential to drive change. So what we're trying to find out from the research, or do with the research really, is to first provide insights that can guide or aid food policy work in Cass and Clay counties. It's important to us that our research is not just to build knowledge, which is great, but also to help the communities that we're working with. We want to understand how those interactions between decision makers influence food policy, and we want to visualize that network that Abby talked about, how everybody is connected. So I've been doing this work around social network analysis for about 5 years now. This is a network map that we created for the Military Families Learning Network, which is a nationwide educational network that serves military family service providers. And so this is the kind of thing that we're trying to create. So it sort of looks like maybe somebody spilled uncooked spaghetti on the floor, but it has a purpose. So the blue squares that you see there, those are people, right? And people are important in driving change. The lines that you see between them, those are the relationships between those people. So we know how those people are connected. And again, when people connect with each other, they are more able to create change. And the colors of those lines that you see on there, those indicate the strength of those relationships. So we're looking at those three things. Who are the people that influence food policy in Cass and Clay counties? What are their relationships or interactions around food policy? And what are the strength or variance of those interactions? So we can learn a lot of things from this. Obviously, we learn, who's out there. We also learn how they're connected. But we learn other things like who can be a bridge. So if we look at this map, over on the right-hand side, you'll see three names, Jowers, Allen, and Chapman Novakovsky. Allen in this little triad is a bridge. She's a bridge between Jowers and Chapman Novakovsky because they're not connected. So when we see that on a map, that can influence like how we go about communication within a network or how we try and get things done within a network, because we know in this map we can use Allen to mediate that relationship or even to connect those two people to each other directly so that they can interact with one another toward whatever change we're seeking. The other thing that we can learn from this is who is on the edges. The edges of a network are important because usually the people that are less connected are connected to other people, because we all have our own networks that are not so tightly connected within the network, and they bring new information and ideas into the network. So in this network, you can kind of see the people who are less connected and sort of at the edges there, like Buchko and Tidball and Garbo and those people. So we know that those people are bringing in new information into the network at a higher pace. And the third thing that we would look at in this particular map is density. This is a very dense network. This is a network that's been together for about 7 years, working together on projects. Other network maps probably wouldn't be as dense, and that would be just something that we would look at is how many connections are there, how tightly are they connected. In this particular project, we'll also have people segmented into groups for each of your main roles. So it'll be interesting to see how are the city councils and commissions connected. Right? How are the county and city councils and commissions connected? How are they connected to this commission or to the steering committee? So that's what we're setting out to do, is create something like this, do an analysis and a report that will help us understand better how decision makers are connected towards food policy. So I'm here today to ask for your help. The first thing I would like the commissioners to do is to complete the survey. You have the survey with a self-addressed stamped envelope. That survey also on the front page that explains the survey and your rights as a participant has a URL if you'd prefer to take it online. If you do take it online, you can feel free to pass this along to somebody else on the other councils and commissions that you serve on. The way that we get to this map, this kind of map, is to have 100% response rate, so we know how everybody is connected to each other. So that's our goal and our challenge, and we'd really appreciate any help that you can provide in that. So encouraging your colleagues who are on the list to complete the survey. If you would like to take extra print surveys, we have a few here with addressed stamped envelopes that you can take to your colleagues if you'd like to help us distribute that. And then finally, if you have any questions or concerns, you can contact me. My email's up there, or I could take your questions now.
Any questions? Yes.
Well, this is great. Thank you so much. I'm also a PhD student at NDSU. The surveys being collected with just the commission, people on the Cass Clay Food Commission, or is that also being collected with people in the community?
It is being collected with what we consider sort of our leaders in food policy. So there's 68 names. Everybody on the commission is on there. Everyone on each of the city council / commissions is on there. Everyone on all the county commissions are on there. And the steering committee is on there. So that ended up to be a total of 68 people. Am I missing a group? Oh, and city planners and community developers, oh, and city administrators are on there as well, you'll notice.
Okay, so this survey is only limited within people that are in policy that can influence policy, right?
Right, and that was our research team, that was part of what the steering committee wanted in order to sort of drive their agenda forward. So that was part of, as researchers, sort of our way of making sure we're doing what the food system needs in Cass and Clay County, or at least what the steering committee feels they need.
Okay, so would there be any point where you would be interested in looking at how the community is engaged with the policymakers?
Yeah, I mean, I would be really interested in that, and we had some discussions about starting there. It's a pretty serious undertaking to get the kind of response rate that we need to build that kind of map. But they can be really interesting. I know Noel has done some work on that in Minnesota through U of M Extension. And yeah, I think that would be great, and I think it would be great for food systems in Cass and Clay County.
I'll be interested in that one as well. This is great, thank you.
Yep.
I'd just like to add that at the end of the survey, there is an option, I probably don't need this, but. At the end of the survey, there's an option to add additional people to the list who you see are influential in our community with food policy. So you can add names beyond the initial 68 who are on there.
Yeah, and let me just point out that because of the way I laid the survey out, that's on the back. There is really a back page, so don't stop on the last page like I would, and just, yeah.
Bob, can I add too? That although there are 68 names on the survey, you don't know all of them, and so it'll go a lot faster. I took the survey online, it took me about 5 minutes, because I don't know 68 people, I know maybe 10, 15 people on the list, and so don't let the number of names detract you from taking the survey.
Question as far as the answers go, you can have more than one answer, I'd assume, for each person, because, for instance, I know Vern, but he and I don't hang out together. We're on a lot of different committees and stuff together, so we certainly communicate. I think we cooperate and coordinate, and we do collaborate where needed, but that's not, we don't necessarily have a close relationship otherwise, I mean, outside of what we work.
Right. So, yeah, I meant to mention that. It's a little bit different than sort of how I describe strength of relationship here. We're just really looking for level of interaction here. So we would like you to respond with what best describes your interactions regarding food policy. So we're kind of focused in on here. How do we interact regarding food policy? And yeah, and you and Commissioner Bennett might have two different ideas of that, and that's completely okay, but we would like you to choose one level that you think best describes that.
Okay, so you want to focus on this, just on the food system, so.
Right, yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Sarah?
I don't see an encouraged deadline. Is there a timeline you'd like us to work with?
Yes, yesterday, no.
Oops.
No, we'll be working, you'll hear from me again, and as I reach out to each of the individual cities and commissioners, or cities or councils and commissions, to try and get response rates. We'll be working on that kind of throughout May towards June, and we'd really like to be in an analysis mode by the end of June at the very latest.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right,
I just want to say that Jenny just handed her survey in. That's how fast it went.
Well, you weren't paying attention to the discussion here.
Maybe not, maybe not.
All right, we'll go to item number 7, which is a commission update on previous and future activities, and I believe they're also going to touch a little bit on the Metro Food Plan, which is Kim and Noel.
All right, morning, everyone. So first on the Metro Food System Plan, MetroCog, specifically Adam, has been working diligently on the 5-year revision of our Metropolitan Food System Plan. And he unfortunately had a family emergency and could not be here. He was going to share just a few of the general information that will be included in the plan. But that we do not have that for you this morning. But Kim and I wanted you to know that we will be scheduling meetings with all of the jurisdictions this summer, along with MetroCog. And the purpose of those meetings will be to provide an update about the Metropolitan Food System Plan. But we also would like to remind the jurisdictions of all of the research that we've done over the last few years related to policy blueprints, community snapshots, and other ways of presenting information about our local food system in the hopes of propelling our policy efforts forward around that. So we would like to remind you about some of those pieces of information that we have already generated for all of you. And then we'll follow up in just a few minutes to ask you what kinds of food system issues you think are bubbling up in the jurisdictions, and what are your ideas on how to move forward on some of those. But first, Kim will provide kind of a recap of what we already have.
So there's a slide in there. So as Noelle said, we kind of wanted to give a real quick review of some of the food systems related topics that we've covered as a commission since we started in 2015. And some of you have been with us from the start, so you're familiar with these. Others that are new, this might provide a little bit of history. But as a commission over the years, we've researched and developed documents for different food systems topics. The first documents were called blueprints, and those are a little bit more intense or comprehensive. And then lately we've been doing issue briefs and snapshots. But regardless of the name, the intent behind the documents was to give jurisdictions that might be interested in moving a particular topic forward in their community the background and the information that might be helpful to do that and have some of that research already done ahead of time. So when the Food Commission first started, we decided to focus on urban agriculture related areas because some of the jurisdictions were dealing with that at the time. Last year we kind of switched to food access, and then currently we're looking at sustainability as it relates to food systems. So on the slide is a listing of all of the different documents that we have researched. We also have a notebook that has each complete document, so if anybody's interested in looking at one in detail, we have that. And all of these can be found on the Cass Clay Food Partners website. Or if you're looking for something in particular, we as a steering committee can help you find that particular document too. But an example of how a community used one of these documents is the chicken issue in Fargo. Using that information in the blueprint, Food Partner members worked with Fargo City staff to draft an ordinance allowing backyard chickens. And the blueprint document provided some of that background information, some of the research behind it, stipulations to consider in an ordinance, as well as ordinance languages from different communities that Fargo could kind of model after to come up with their own specific ordinance. And we've also done a case study as to kind of how that process worked and how you can use a blueprint to do that in a community. That's an area that you can have as well. We've got that case study for reference. We've also used the gleaning blueprint to start a gleaning network and system where we're connecting farmers with volunteers who are interested in getting produce that might be wasted on a farm or in a field and bringing it to food pantries and food banks. And we've also used the Healthy Corner Store blueprint in a project that we're working on right now with a convenience store in a food desert in the Fargo area. So we just wanted to remind you that these are the different areas and these different topic areas that we have researched, and these documents are available for any jurisdiction wanting to move an issue forward.
So before we turn it around and ask you all some questions, do you have any questions for Kim and I about what we just covered? All right. Well, then, as I mentioned already, we are eager to prepare for our presentations and conversations with the jurisdictions this summer. And we also know that there are some food policy issues that are bubbling up in the communities. So we would love to hear from commission members, the public, the steering committee, what kinds of issues related to food policy are currently on your radar right now?
I ask a question first. The resource guide you had, the booklet, has that been provided to our the various municipalities for their reference? It's great it's on the website, but that requires effort to go there and get it. So I think that would be, if you haven't, when you do your presentations this coming summers, make sure that those are given out. And a secondary comment to that, I know West Fargo just created their long-range plan here about a year ago. Some of the topics you've covered within this resource guide was within that report. And I don't know, I believe some of the municipalities here are looking at that or in the process of that, and I think it would be an important resource to get to whomever they've engaged for their long-range planning.
I know you've mentioned this before, to get these out. So I think when we do come, I think that's a great idea. We could bring copies to whoever wants it. We've also been talking about maybe getting them out to some of the city planners so they at least know the topic areas and some of the research that's been done in those areas. So
yeah, that would be where I would recommend, at least in West Fargo, is get to our city planning department so they have that as a resource guide. So if someone comes in and asking about one of these subjects, they have something they can fall back on.
Okay. Okay.
Any questions or feedback for the ladies?
I
Sarah?
can give them feedback. So, of course, in wintertime, people are always happy to give suggestions about gardening and other things. This was a particularly challenging year for residents. But I did want to highlight that the Metro Food Plan is referenced in our strategic plan that we just went through last year. So that's why I'm really excited for it to be presented, particularly with new members on our council. We have seen some activity on like rain gardens and pollinator habitats, and so that's even trickled into some of our city practices as far as planting, more regional appropriate plants. And then we did modify some of our ordinances around rain gardens, but I know a lot of people are interested in the pollinator and animal habitats. We partner with quite a few organizations along our river corridors and things, so we're not just mowing grass, so we're actually providing some added benefit. So there's always interested in increasing that. The composting piece I hear from different folks, I don't know that we're ready to hop onto a municipal level, but certainly I would be curious if there is some sort of pilot project or something like that too. But also we do have the ability for people to do backyard composting, which is great. But there's interest, but it is the expense and startup of that for a municipal level would be something that would prohibit us. And then I do also hear we have a lot of, particularly on close to the river, there's a number of unused plots of land, city buyouts, and so I have had residents inquire about more community garden space. I know there are a lot of models with the Growing Together gardens and other things too. I've had residents look specifically for a lot that they just want to rent their own plot of land and not necessarily do kind of a sharing garden experience. So that one comes up periodically for me. And then I also hear about beekeeping and chickens as well, from both sides on that issue, and it's been cool to see that there's more education growing around beekeeping in particular. There's a group that meets regionally, and I see you have a presentation coming up this weekend on the chickens as well. So I hear both sides for that issue, but people are talking about it at least.
Wonderful. How about other folks?
Someone in the audience that'd like to speak?
I learned yesterday at the Cass Clay, that's where I'm at right now, the Hunger Coalition meeting, that Metro Transit riders are limited to 4 bags per rider. And I was wondering, that's the first that I had heard of that. And particularly a lot of the clients I work with have transportation barriers that use public transportation, but none of them have yet mentioned it to me until I started asking if that was a real thing, and they just assume everybody knows that. So when I asked a couple clients yesterday after the meeting if that was a thing and it was a barrier to them, and they said yes, it was a thing that I figured I should bring because I didn't know that, and I feel like I'm pretty connected. And so we're doing some more advertising on the bus for the Double Snap Buck program that I'm a part of. And it's a problem to me if they're trying to buy groceries and they're trying to stay sustainable and they can't do more than 4 bags. Is the purse a bag? Is a grocery bag a bag? What is that limit? And I was just wondering if anyone in this room has heard of that, and also why it's a law. I did ask Senator Tim Mathern yesterday in our VISTA meeting about it, and he said that it could be a city or a governmental policy. I just kind of wanted to diagnose that and see if it's a city policy and see if it's something that we can change. I was floored by that. And I don't ride the bus enough with more than 4 bags to ever be stopped, and I don't know if we're even enforcing it, but I think that's a huge food policy barrier, especially for those that already have a transportation barrier, and I just wanted to address it.
That's great. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't serve on the MAT bus board. I don't know if any of the others do.
I do.
Sarah does, so.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that's something I guess it'd certainly bring to the MAT bus. There is a board that oversees MAT bus, and that's something that could be a discussion item. You might touch base with Sarah if you'd like. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Do you know why they will have a limit of 4 bags? Do you have an idea?
Senator Mathern thought it might be for bigger cities, maybe we adopted a larger city rule. I personally, when I see buses go by, they're usually fairly empty. Even the campus buses, I work on campus now, north end of campus, they're still not super busy. I don't I were kind of trying to stop a problem before it's a thing. I don't know why. I would just see it being as more of a hindrance than a help. I think
I would guess it's physical space.
but it's something that
Same thing for a stroller too, I think, as far as figuring out why.
Well, Kim and I have both made a note, and this is news to me, but I can commit to looking into it. And I know that in other communities, like Duluth, for example, they've adapted their Metro Transit to actually incorporate more space for things like grocery bags and like overhead bins and things like that. So this is a really important issue in the context of hunger and food access. So we will commit to looking into it more. And I know that our time is running out here, but I just want to thank you all for sharing your ideas. And please do not hesitate to get in touch with Kim and I or any members of the steering committee. If there are particular issues like Barb raised that you would like us to look into, or if you think that there are other ways that we can serve as a resource to your organizations or to your jurisdictions that you serve. So anything to add, Kim?
That's good. We'll see you this summer.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're up to the public comment part of the agenda. And is there anyone in the public here that'd like to speak on any topic related? If so, please step to the lectern if you would. And again, state your name for the record, please.
Good morning. I'm Barb Villela. I am coming to you with the Prairie Ritz Community Fund. That was part of my comment actually today, so we already took care of that. I'm here to just give a little update on what we've been up to. Our spring garden has been tilled. Composting has or will be coming in soon to start that work. Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings are the days that we'll be working on that garden. As far as exactly when, we're still kind of figuring out the soil right now, so more to come on that. I'm in charge of our program called the Double Snap Bucks. Anyone that comes into Prairie Ritz Food Co-op with SNAP or formerly food stamps can get an extra $10 a week in fresh, frozen, or canned fruits and vegetables from us and some really generous sponsors in the community that have helped with that. I do want to extend a request to anyone that thinks of a place that I could give more brochures, flyers, posters. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody knows that we exist. So far, I've done most of our social service agencies in town, a lot of the local places around the co-op, just random businesses that I kind of run by. But if there is someone I've missed, I would love to know who that is, and just to make sure that people know that if they want an extra $10 a week in fresh, frozen, or canned vegetables, we're going to work on that for them. I'm hoping to expand that into anything in our store, $10 of anything. We're still working on the specifics of that. And then the third piece is every Thursday we are still at Madison School, which is Census Tract 6 is our VISTA focus. My VISTA service as a Peace Corps volunteer is done in June, but I'll continue to work on certain things on behalf of the community fund. But we are focusing Census Tract 6 because of the food deserts in that area. So Madison eventually, hopefully expanding around that. But we do classes every Thursday, cooking and things. We've now started bringing in retirement homes to the co-op. We made cauliflower tabbouleh, which was pretty fun. Good Samaritan came out and joined us. So we're going to do more of those kind of things also. Again, people on fixed incomes, we're really trying to expand, not Vista, but co-op. I'm kind of doing a little bit of both now, just helping back at the co-op a little bit. So those are really important. And also, if I take off my community fund hat and put on just a public service hat, I've actually been talking with producers of the market at West Acres, which has their own farmers market on Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. We are hoping to expand a double snap buck program there as well. So it's kind of a secret, but I'm not good at secrets. So we are going to hopefully expand that. We've been talking with Karen Ahrens, who's a local Food Alliance partner in the western side of the state, and kind of getting them in contact with more people to hopefully expand that too. So doing lots of really cool things with food and food access. And again, the bus piece was something I learned yesterday, and I wanted to appreciate the chance to tell you about it. So yeah, we're doing lots of fun stuff. We've given away about $7,000 worth of vouchers and free food so far with the community fund and the co-op with our partners. So it's going really well. We went from doing like one like every 2 weeks, then we went to one a week. Now we're getting 1 to 2 a day of people coming in with expanded food access. So it's been pretty cool to see. And people can round up at the till at the co-op. If you ever wonder, if you go in there, why they're saying, would you like to round up for the community fund? That's what that's going towards. And that's been going really well also. And people now will just be like, round up before we even ask. So it's pretty fun. Thanks.
Good.
Oh, I brought coupons. There's coupons on that back table. Feel free to take one.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public or even the consultants, the experts sitting over here on the side? Well, seeing no more, I guess we'll.
I have something, sorry.
Oh, here she comes. All right, Abby. Or Noel, I mean. Sorry.
That's okay. As Sarah mentioned, in extension, on the Minnesota side, we are having a workshop about backyard chickens in Moorhead this Saturday. I'm really excited. We're having our statewide expert on poultry, Wayne Martin, is traveling from St. Paul to deliver this workshop. Part of the motivation for it is that this has been widely requested, especially by new Americans in our community and in surrounding communities. The workshop will be at the Courtyard Marriott, 10 a.m. to 12:30 Saturday morning. I have some flyers at the back table. And we will be including a discussion of the existing policies in Moorhead and the surrounding communities, as well as some information on how people can be engaged in the policy influencing or changing process as well. So a very comprehensive workshop about chickens. Please help us spread the word and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, move on here then to number 9, which is the Commission Steering Committee Roundtable, which I guess I'll just ask if anyone has any comments they'd like to state before we move on. Sounds pretty quiet. So we'll move on to number 10. It says here, the next First Fridays is May 10th. Anyone got time and place on that again?
It's at Theater B again,
Peter B,
in 8 a.m., I believe.
8 a.m. Okay, and I noticed, I think online today, that the Red River Market's gonna be moving to the Forum for a couple year run here. Forum parking lot, so it sounds like they're gonna be reconstructing or doing something with the Goodyear property, so.
The Goodyear property is going to be turned into a parking ramp, and that construction's starting soon.
Okay, so it sounds like the Forum's taking that on in their parking lot for, at least it said, the next couple years it will.
Yeah, I believe the long-term intention is to move it to the plaza at the new Block 9 building when that's done.
Okay, good. And we're gonna give you the summer off, except for Kim and Noel, they gotta work this summer on these topics, but the next meeting looks like is September 11th, so is there any other things to note? Guess seeing none, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make one.
I guess they want us out of here. Okay, we got a motion.